Please join me in Gasho. Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our regular Sunday service. Before I start, or before we go any further, I wanted to introduce you uh, to a young gentleman who's visiting us. His name is Reverend Kensho Hashimoto. He's actually is studying right now for a year at Thompson University in Kamloops, but he's in the graduate program at Ryukoku University. And he's hopeful. His father used to be a kaikyoshi in Hawaii in the 80s, and Reverend Hashimoto is hopefully going to be a kaikyoshi in the future as well. So, do you want to say anything to him? No. ありがとうございます。So I was hoping I'd introduce you to more people here at our temple, but we only have a couple others here at the temple, and everybody's joining in by Zoom today. So welcome everyone, and welcome to those who are here as well. And we'll begin our regular Dharma service with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the recitation of the name of the Buddha or the Onenbutsu. Please join me in Gasho. Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman loves, Naman loves. Next, we're going to be reading together our pledge, and I'm just going to bring it up on the screen. And I really need to get this printed, I think, put it into our Seiten. But our pledge, it was, of course, written by our Gomonshi-sama, and we have been using it for a while now. Can you see the screen okay? Yeah, okay. So we'll read together our pledge. Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Next, we will have the chanting, and today we are chanting the Junirai. If you have the purple Seiten, it's on page 63. and it's also on the screen as well. No one loves, no one loves, no one loves. No one. 개슈텐니 쇼크교 아미나 센요소크소 자이미메와라고 무려버시시네 건지기신전요센노 샤마타교녀소부 쇼모그조냐그쇼랭에 고가조라이미다송 맨젠조녀망갑 이거연여센니지가 소녀탱크끝이라 고가조라이미다송 간논조다이 간치유지 스즈메소쇼공 노브그게 노마게마 오가조라이미다소 무비무그고조조 슈도그게게는 요고그 쇼사리야 그토그지사이 고가조라이미다소 진보묘몽보사슈 무료쇼마조산나 이쇼슈조간리기지 고가조라이미다소 곤다요겐지쇼게 쟁거조조베다이사 오이자조뇨센노 쇼가조라이미나솜 진모쇼라이 쇼부시 갱겐진드시안락 생고성엔 요극여 고가 조라이미다소 쇼무조무가도 야근요서이가드대요로 이슈세 범무묘지 고가조라이미다소 이성버셋무악으며 야금은 연이 악도흐 주니 시신교희서 오간조라이미나소 이소무료맹교 무쇼슈악지지기 오조흐다이 시보다이 오가조라이미나소 가세드 이성의덕지 주세무엔요가이스 쇼약의생거 조조샤 쇼쇼히고 나마남 나 나, 나, 마, 나, 나, 마, 나, 부, 나, 마, 나, 가니시그도그 변호세이사이 노드모다이시 오조 안하고 Namanavs, 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 Namanavs. Please join us in reading the English translation, and you'll find that in your Satan, the text. It's on page 70, and it's also on the screen. 12 Adorations, Junirai translation. Before Amida Buddha, whom heavenly beings worship, I humble myself in deepest reverence. In his wondrous land of bliss, surrounded is he by countless bodhisattvas. His golden form shines forth, pure like the king of Mount Sumeru. His practice of truth is steadfast, like an elephant's pace. His eyes radiate like pure blue lotus blossoms. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. His countenance perfectly pure and round, like the full moon. His majestic light shines like 1,000 suns and moons. His voice is like a heavenly drum, yet like a heavenly bird, kokila. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Avalokiteshvara wears upon his crown the image of Amida adorned with many precious jewels. He subdues the arrogance of demons and heretics. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Incomparable, vast, and pure his virtues are, freely extending like vast open space, his acts freely benefiting all. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Bodhisattvas from the 10 quarters and countless maras, demons, always venerate him. He dwells with vow power for the sake of all beings. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. In the golden treasure pond where the lotus flowers bloom, established with goodness is a wondrous throne, where reigns the Buddha like the king of the mountains. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. From the 10 quarters, bodhisattvas come. Revealing wondrous powers, they attain blissful state. Honoring his face, they offer eternal homage. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. All things are transient and without self, like the moon on water, lightning, shadow, or the dew. The Dharma cannot be expressed by words, the Buddha proclaimed. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. No words of evil are in his land, no fear of evildoers, nor evil paths. With sincere heart all beings worship him. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. His land of infinite expediencies is without degenerate things or wicked beings. Upon rebirth, non-retrogressive Bodhi does one attain. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Thus have I praised the virtues of Amida Buddha. Boundless are they like the water of the sea. Upon receiving these pure and good qualities, may all beings be reborn into his land. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo. 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 Okay. Once again, good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. Okay. I'm going to start off by reading a passage from the collected works of Shinran Shonin. This is from a piece that he wrote. It's called Notes on Once Calling and Many Calling. So there was when Shinran Shonin was still a disciple of Honen's, there was an argument as to which is more important, once reciting the name just once or many times. And it was felt, well, if you recite it once, then it must be much better to do it many times. But Shinran was of the thought that because we're not petitioning the Buddha for anything, but in fact, it's receiving the working of the Buddha. The moment we receive it and we call out the name out of true gratitude and joy, then once is enough. The rest of the callings or the recitation of the name is out of gratitude. And so this piece that Shinran wrote is on the notes on once calling and many calling, and this is just part of the passage from there. And he writes, in the larger sutra of the Buddha of immeasurable life, it is taught, all sentient beings, as they hear the name, realize even one thought moment of shinjin and joy, which is directed to them from Amida's sincere mind, and aspiring to be born in that land, they then attain birth and dwell in the stage of non-retrogression. Then that's from the largest sutra, and Shinan breaks it down and he comments as follows. All sentient beings means all sentient beings throughout the 10 quarters. Hear the name means is to hear the name that embodies the primal vow. Hear means to hear the primal vow and be free of doubt. Further, it indicates Shinji. Realize even one thought moment of Shinji and joy means here, Shinji means is hearing the vow to Tathagata and being free of doubt. Joy means to be gladdened in body and gladdened in heart. It means to rejoice beforehand at being assured of attaining what one shall attain. So Shinan comments on this and explains it a little further. But today I'd like to explain a little bit more about this using a couple of stories. One is a very famous parable. It's not even a parable, it's a story from the teachings of the Buddha. And it is talking about this mother and daughter. And one time the Buddha was visiting their village, or the Buddha and the entourage were staying at a monastery just by the village. And so, as was the customary way of doing things, the villagers, those who had audience with the Buddha, would all go and give gifts. And so, this woman and her daughter, unfortunately, they were very poor. And so they had no idea what they can give that would be appropriate to give to the Lord Buddha. And so they thought about it for a while, and then they realized the one thing that they could do is they could cut off their beautiful long hair and sell it. And with that money, get something that they can give to the Buddha. So in fact, they cut off their beautiful long hair and they sell it. And they think, well, with the money they have, perhaps they could get a lantern. Because back then, light was a very precious commodity. So they go to the lantern shop, and the owner looks at it. Wasn't much that they got for the hair, and looks at it and says, "Well, for this amount, all I can really give you is half of a shell, and we'll put a wick in it, and you could have a little bit of oil in it." And so they figured, well, that's all we can afford. So they received that. But when they get to the monastery where the Buddha and his attendants were, they were shocked because in that monastery, it was filled with lanterns, beautiful lanterns, many of them very elaborate. And they were actually embarrassed by their pittance of a lantern, a shell. But the Buddha received all gifts equally. And so when it was their turn to have their audience, they bowed and produced their shell, and the Buddha bowed and received it graciously and put it amongst the rest of the lanterns. And it said that evening there was a tremendous storm, and one by one the lanterns started blowing out. And in the morning, it was said the only lantern that remained staying lit was this lantern, or the shell, I guess, with the wick coming out of it. And the Buddha was said to have said that this was this oil lantern or shell was one that was given from true heart, and therefore it remained lit throughout the evening. The point about all this, though, is that this mother and the daughter had true devotion to the Buddha. When you think about it, they were so poor, they could have used that money probably to buy food for themselves, but instead they went out to buy a gift for the Buddha. So this devotion was to show the gratitude for receiving the Dharma, how great their sense of gratitude was. The other story I have, and some of you heard me tell this one, is actually to do with Mother Teresa. And she wasn't a Buddhist, I'll straighten that out, but she had many qualities that we consider to be bodhisattva-like. But it was said that one day that Mother Teresa was visiting a village in India, and as part of her work, charitable work, she would share food with the people. And so she visited this one very impoverished family, and she took enough rice to feed that family for a couple of days. And so she took the rice with her and gave it to the lady of the household. And to her surprise, the lady excused herself and went outside and didn't come back for about 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. And Mother Teresa was said to have been kind of a little bit not upset, but curious to find out, where she disappeared to suddenly. So finally, this lady comes back, and Mother Teresa asked her, "So where did you go to?" And she said, "Well, I went to share the rice with my neighbors." And she said, "My neighbors are just as poor as we are. So anything that we receive, we share with others." And Mother Teresa realized the goodness of this individual's heart, and also realized that there's something more that this individual understood about oneness, about sharing, about being together. And so when we listen to the Dharma, we are then receiving this gift that tells us we do not belong by ourselves. Sometimes when we hear about Buddha Dharma, people think very negatively. We talk about mortality, we talk about death, we have remembrance services, memorial services, etc., etc. And so they sometimes think it's a negative thing. But in fact, according to Shinran Shoni in this passage, that one thought moment, when we hear the name, we realize even one thought moment of Shinjin and joy. So when we hear the teachings, we are overcome with joy in realizing that there is something greater than our immediate existence. And when we receive this and understand this, then we begin to act accordingly. We can't act just thinking of myself. We have to start thinking of those around us, the world around us. And so as we listen to the teaching, we receive it, and out of true gratitude, recite the name, Namo Amida Butsu. And the name itself is calling us to reflect, calling us to realize there is something greater. One of the things that my parents always did to us as children, and maybe Hashimoto Sensei can attest to this in his family too. Whenever we received a gift or something, they always made us take it to the Butsudan, the altar. Yes? No? We had to always take ours, whatever it was, to the Butsudan, and then we would have to put our hands together in front of the Buddha to say Namo Amida Butsu before we could open up the gift. Okay. And that act itself, it's a very simple act, but it's placing the Dharma in your life. It's making sure that you realize that this gift is not just from an individual person, but is receiving in gratitude for all that we receive. And as a child, of course, I didn't. It was just a customary thing to do, so we would just go up and do this. But it stays with you. It stays in your heart. It's something that you it becomes a part of your being. And in the Buddhist teaching, my grandfather used to say, the Buddha Dharma, we take it in through our pores. What it means is it's a process of osmosis. By listening over and over and over, even some of the same stories, it starts slowly sinking in. And so, as we listen to the voice of the Buddha, the name of the Buddha, we rejoice. And out of true happiness, rejoicing, we recite the name, Namo Amida Butsu. So at this time, if I can ask you, please again, join me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we had one Yvonne from Texas. I don't know if she logged out at one point or got cut off at one point, but thank you all for joining us for our regular Sunday service. I'm going to keep on repeating. Actually, I'm going to keep on repeating what I did last week. Is that starting in December, the services will be from 10:30 English service. So I'll be sending out the Zoom invitations as well, but they will be from 10:30. Okay. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your Sunday. It's actually quite a nice day here in Richmond. I don't know wherever you are. I see we have Zoom participants from Vancouver Island on the West Coast and as far as New York on the East Coast. So welcome to all of you, and thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sensei. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you. Hi, Jennifer. How are you doing?
We're good.
Good.